Good evening, YouTube. My name is Dan, and I'm the coach of your St. Louis Rampardos. Now, today I'm going to be talking about the UCL, the United Championship League, a brand new league brought to you here on YouTube, featuring some of the best Pokemon battlers in the competitive scene and on YouTube. We have some fantastic personalities here, and I don't think the UCL would be the UCL without me, yours truly, Coach aDrive of the St. Louis Rampardos. Now, the Rampardos have proven their worth and their ability to battle at a very, very high competitive level, going 9-1 in the GBA, the Global Battle Association, this past season. We're currently making a playoff run, but we are here to talk about the UCL, a brand new league with a brand new draft and a brand new team. Now, the coaches and the members of the UCL spent the last few days this week drafting for 12 hours total, live on King Nappy's Twitch stream. And after the draft, we have combined our teams. We all have a 12-man roster featuring 3 Pokemon from each of the standard Smogon tiers, including the OU tier, the UU tier, the RU tier, and the NU tier. Now, if you aren't familiar with Smogon battling, the way the tiers are broken up are typically by usage and viability. So Pokemon who are typically very, very good, Pokemon like Weavile, Latios, and Latias, Garchomp, and so on and so forth, are moved up to the OU tier. Pokemon who have a lot of viability but are still, have some flaws or weaknesses, might not have the best synergy in the world, will move to the UU tier, Pokemon like Mamoswine. We also have the RU tier and the NU tier, which are the 2 lower tiers. Now, the RU tier should not be looked at as not having any good threats, because there's Pokemon like Tyrantrum, Tangrowth, and more. And of course, the NU tier features a lot of cool Pokemon like a non-Mega Kangaskhan, a Lantern, Girder, and some really cool non-fully evolved Pokemon that you might otherwise not see in the higher tiers of competitive play. Now, I want to emphasize the fact that those lower tiers are very, very important, because you're able to cover a lot of your weaknesses and flaws that you might otherwise have with those lower tier Pokemon. So each Pokemon on this team and this roster has a very important role on our squad. I'll be breaking down each of the tiers that we drafted, why I drafted the Pokemon I drafted, and how I think we're going to do in the full season. I suggest you get a drink and some popcorn now, because this is going to be a pretty long video. A lot of people have been asking me for an in-depth recap and an in-depth thought process of why I drafted the Pokemon I've drafted and why I've constructed my team the way I have, and I'm going to give you just that. Now, if you guys are enjoying this video and you are a fan of the St. Louis Rampardos or a member of the aDrive Army, I would love it if you could show your support on the like button down below. Now, jumping into the OU draft of things here. We were seeded to be number 11th out of 16 teams in the OU draft, so unfortunately our draft positioning was not the greatest. My draft priorities for the first round included Mega Metagross, Mega Venusaur, and Mega Altaria. If I could get any one of those 3, I would consider the first round a success. If my pick was going to be late in the first round, perhaps 15th or 16th pick, my plan was to indeed grab Mega Sableye, and then on the wheel turn and pick up Chansey. Now, my original thought for the draft order, and I want to explain this, was I originally anticipated that the draft order that we randomized originally in the OU tier would be the draft order for the entire draft, including UU, RU, and NU. That was not the case. So my original plan was that if I was going to be a low draft pick, 15th, 16th or so, then that would also mean I'd have the first pick in UU because I had a bad pick in OU. So I'd be the last pick in OU, the first pick in the second round of OU, the last pick in the third round of OU, and then the first pick in the first round of UU. I hope that makes sense. That was not the case, however. We decided to randomize the teams each round, or each tier. So we had the same draft order for the OU tier, then we had a new draft order for the NU tier, RU tier, and UU tier, respectively. Now, I very much so disagreed with this, and you'll see that in my draft positionings, I did not have very good draft orders. I got kind of put in a bad spot. But I'm not going to make excuses, because we did end up coming out with a very, very good team that I'm very proud of, so I hope you guys are very stoked and excited to hear the rest of this press conference. Now, the first Pokemon that we were able to draft, despite me thinking it was going to go way earlier, is the ginormous threat that is Mega Metagross. Now, Metagross is so good, it was actually banned from the other league I'm a part of. Metagross features a fantastic typing, only being weak to just a few things, including fire and ground, ghost and dark. I might be missing something, but that's the general weaknesses. It has priority in Bullet Punch. It has a variety of good moves, including Meteor Mash, Zen Headbutt. It boasts a ridiculous attack stat and defense stat. Not to mention, after Mega Evolving, its speed goes up to 110. Let's not forget about the fact that its special attack is also viable. Mega Metagross is the cornerstone of the team, and as soon as I was able to draft him with the 11th pick in the first round, which was to me mind-blowing, I knew I had a good team already. In my opinion, Mega Metagross can take down teams by itself, let alone having a squad of 11 other Pokemon outside. I made a tweet yesterday, and I said that Mega Metagross is going to get 25 kills this season. To give you an idea, that is a tremendous amount. That is almost 2 kills per game. There's 15 weeks in the UCL. 2 kills a game is pretty significant, so I am going to put this out there and put the challenge on myself as the coach, and of course, Mega Metagross as well. That is going to be a 25 kill Pokemon this season and take the MVP in the UCL. Our next Pokemon and our second draft overall in the OU tier was none other than this speedy dog that is Raikou. Now, fast electric types are known in this format to be very, very effective. Jolteon was a MVP winner a few seasons ago in another league because it's a fast electric type. If your opponent does not have a ground resist or an electric resist or a ground type Pokemon, then your speedy electric type like Raikou is free to Volt Switch and provide extreme amounts of momentum. Perhaps getting free switch-ins for Metagross, or allow me to Mega Evolve on something that otherwise couldn't handle it. Raikou is very, very important for this team because it provides such momentum and such power, rocking an incredible speed and special attack stat, not to mention its natural bulk that allows it to function pretty well as a choice Scarf user, choice Specs user, Assault Vest user, or even a Calm Mind setup Raikou. There are so many opportunities for Raikou to succeed and shine in the GBA and the UCL and all these formats, the EXPNU and so on and so forth, and I look for Raikou to do big, big things here in the UCL this season. I'm very, very glad that I was able to pick it. I had scouted out Pokemon like Jolteon in the lower tiers, perhaps even Thundurus, but I decided that Raikou was the safest pick, seeing as it was still sitting on the board in the second round, and I didn't want to chance not being able to grab something like Jolteon later because it is such a highly sought after Pokemon, especially if you're not able to grab a good electric type early. Now, you could say you could grab some decent ones in the lower tiers like Electabuzz and Electivire, but Raikou does outclass them, and that is why it is in the OU tier. Now, I'm going to look at my notes for a moment here and just kind of talk a little bit about some of the picks that went before that. Sableye was drafted prior to that. Clefable and Tornadus also. Mew, another great pickup, was something I looked at as well. But ultimately, being able to grab Mega Metagross and then Raikou, I felt very, very good about those two picks. And I would say that I came out of the first 2 rounds incredibly successful without worrying about any snipes. I felt very, very good about that. Now, moving into our third round of the OU tier, my eyes were set on a few different Pokemon. The first of which was actually Togekiss. Togekiss would have provided a very good fairy typing. It provides a flying typing, which also gives us a good pairing with our 2 Pokemon that now have ground weaknesses in Raikou and Metagross. But unfortunately, Togekiss was snatched up before I was able to draft. The next Pokemon I was looking at was Victini. Now, Victini also would have been a fantastic Pokemon, providing another U-turner, providing some momentum, and nothing really wants to take a Choice Banded V-Create. That thing hits incredibly, incredibly hard, but unfortunately, that Pokemon was also picked beforehand. Now, that might not have been a bad thing because it would have added another ground weakness to us, which wasn't something I wanted to do. So I had to kind of settle here, but I don't consider this a settle. I think we were able to grab a very, very, very viable Pokemon in Conkeldurr. Now, Conkeldurr is known for its massive attack stat and ability to rock 3 different amazing abilities, including Sheer Force, Guts, and I believe Iron Fist. Now, all 3 of those are very viable abilities, but what it does for me is something that a lot of other Pokemon cannot do successfully, and it provides me a very, very good status absorber. Now, Conkeldurr can run a number of different sets, including Assault Vested. It can even be banded, Life Orb with Sheer Force if you really want to get crazy, and it can do a lot of other things with its natural bulk. You'll see a theme in this draft in the fact that I focus on natural bulk. I wanted power, and I wanted bulk, and I got that with Conkeldurr. I think I upset a few people in the draft when I did pick Conkeldurr because I think a lot of people had their sights set on it because it is such a good Pokemon. Again, it has a base 140 attack, and it does get the elemental punches, and it gets perhaps one of the best moves in the game in Knockoff. I was very, very happy leaving OU, jumping into UU, knowing that I had 3 of the best Pokemon in the game. Now, I think looking out after the OU tier was done, I considered myself to have the best draft at this point in time. Mega Metagross alone is the reason for that. But you throw a very, very good, fast electric type Raikou on top of that, and then throw a big beast that is Conkeldurr right there. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I really felt amazing coming out of my draft. Now, Conkeldurr does have a few weaknesses like flying and fairy, but Metagross I think pairs very nicely with them, and the two in tandem are going to destroy. We have a lot of wall breakers already, and I felt really good going out of OU. The only other team that I felt was kind of threatening so far at this point was actually Kristen and the Talonflames. Picking up Heatran and Ferrothorn to start off her draft was a very, very good start, and then also Latias on top of that. That's going to make it very challenging to take down those three Pokemon, but, you know, like I said, I don't want to disrespect anyone. A lot of people had great drafts, and I think we all did a great job coming out of OU, but I felt like the Rampardos really nailed it. Moving over to the UU tier, I thought that I would have had a better pick in UU because of the way the draft order was, but I was incorrect. So I ended up getting randomized into the 12th pick in the UU tier. I was a bit devastated by this because there was one particular Pokemon I wanted and needed to have on my team, and that Pokemon was Hydreigon. Now, Hydreigon, if you don't know, pairs perfectly with Mega Metagross. Absolutely perfectly from an offensive standpoint. Mega Metagross is weak to ground, but Hydreigon has Levitate. Mega Metagross is weak to fire, but Hydreigon resists it. The only thing that they don't resist together is fighting. The two of them pair perfect together, guys. Absolutely perfect from an offensive standpoint. And having the ability to U-turn and Volt Switch with Hydreigon and Raikou is incredibly essential for this team. Now, I wasn't positive whether I would be able to get Hydreigon as the 12th pick because oftentimes Hydreigon is looked at as one of the biggest threats in the UU tier. However, I got very, very lucky on this one, and the Hydreigon pick did fall all the way down to the 12th position and was picked up by the St. Louis Rampardos. Now, Hydreigon, if you guys don't know, Dark typing is a phenomenal offensive type in competitive Pokemon. Hydreigon boasts a 98 base speed, which is going to allow it to edge out over Haxorus and other threats that are in the 95 base speed tier. Often run with a Choice Scarf, but can be done a lot of different ways, Choice Specs, Life Orb, so on and so forth. Hydreigon provides so much offensive utility and momentum by being able to be a special attacker or even a physical attacker, or most commonly seen mixed with U-turn. It gives me a giant dragon threat that is going to be able to cover some of the other weaknesses, as I said before, giving me that Levitator to kind of help with the two ground weaknesses I had already had with Metagross and Raikou. Hydreigon seemed like the absolute perfect pick. The second I drafted Mega Metagross, I knew I needed Hydreigon. We were able to lock it down, so I feel very good about that. I do want to take a moment here before I jump into the rest of the UU picks while I'm thinking about it, because this is not scripted. This is strictly me just talking off the top of my head. I wanted to thank a few different individuals, those people being Mega Mogwai, John Pokemon, TNA TV, Adam, and of course Sam Fufu. All four of those individuals were very, very instrumental in this draft, and I don't want to take all the credit for myself. My council of the four of the best battlers on YouTube was able to advise me and get me to the place I wanted to be. Now, I'm not going to say they drafted for me, but I will say that they did draft, they did have a very significant influence over the Pokemon I picked. Knowing that I had to pick Pokemon that fit my playstyle, but also that I considered to be valuable and viable. All four of those individuals were fantastic in helping, and I do want to just take a moment to thank them. Now, having the 12th pick in the UU draft basically forced me to have a better pick in the second round of the UU draft. So I had a couple different things on the board in front of me. Some of the big things that I was looking at, potentially Florges, maybe even Milotic were taken. I really, really wanted Mamoswine, but I wasn't willing to spend my second pick on Mamoswine. We have a little bit of an issue on our team right now, and the only Pokemon that can reliably get up Stealth Rocks and remove Stealth Rocks, well, we don't have a hazard remover. We only have Mega Metagross to set up rocks. So you'll see later on in this draft, it's a theme that I try to cover that hole, because I don't necessarily want my Mega Metagross being my rock setter. It's too good for that, to be perfectly honest. So we needed a Defogger or a Rapid Spinner at this point. I missed out on Togekiss earlier on, and I think a couple of the other Pokemon like Tentacruel were already taken. Now, I would have been that guy who drafted Cresselia, but it didn't work out too well. So I had to pick this Pokemon, and I'm not sad about it at all. We were able to pick the beastly, quick, and hard-hitting Crobat. Now, Crobat is known for its 130 base speed stat, absolutely blazing speed, the fastest Pokemon on my team. It also rocks an impressive 90 attack stat, carrying moves like Brave Bird. It can also have reliable recovery and Roost. Not to mention the ability to use things like U-Turn for momentum, Toxic, Super Fang, Poison Fang, X-Scissor, Cross Poison, all sorts of things, and even more importantly, the ability to defog. having a defrog on our team, while weak to rocks, is still very good. And I think having that big stab flying type Pokemon that also gives us a little bit of a poison type to help us handle fairies a little bit better alongside Metagross, I think was actually a perfect pick for us. I'm actually glad things fell out the way they did, because I probably would not have drafted Crobat at that time if it was not for some of the other picks being sniped in front of me. I think Crobat's going to add a lot to our team, having the ability to be defensive as well, not to mention the ability to run Nasty Plot and Special Crobat with things like Heat Wave. Now, we had a very, very bad pick as the last pick in the UU round, 12th in the third round of UU, and a lot of the options were taken. Some of the Pokemon I was looking at that I was considering, I debated between Empoleon, but I didn't want to pick up another fighting weakness. I debated between Pokemon like Blastoise to give myself a reliable Rapid Spinner. But ultimately, the Pokemon that was in mind, aside from Mamoswine, as I mentioned before, was Vaporeon. Now, Vaporeon is known to be one of the bulkiest of bulky waters, and I think bulky waters are incredibly important to any team. Rocking an impressive HP stat, special attack stat, special defense stat, and one of the better moves in the game in Scald, Vaporeon is a phenomenal addition to this team, able to sponge up hits and basically beat Pokemon like Suicune one-on-one that otherwise would be a problem. Vaporeon fits this team very, very well and adds a little bit of a defensive presence that I otherwise did not have. I mentioned bulk is important to me, and Vaporeon fits just that, adding a big wall. Now, Vaporeon also can Heal Bell, so it provides team support for Metagross. It can use things like Wish and Baton Pass to pass away stat boosts or health increasers like Wish. And Wish is going to be passing a lot of HP from Vaporeon's base 130 HP stat. Not to mention the fact that it does have 110 special attack, I believe, which can be hitting things very, very hard with Scald and Ice Beam naturally without any sort of investment. Vaporeon fits this team very, very well, and I'm very, very glad to say I have it on the team. Now, walking away from day one here, the OU and the UU tiers, I felt amazing about our pick. Despite getting a bit shafted by the fact that we had late round picks in both tiers, I felt like we were able to come out with a very good draft. I can't emphasize enough how happy I was coming out of OU and UU, realizing that the Rampardos have a very good 6. A lot of people were saying that we probably might have had the best starting 6 in the league, if not the best, in the top 3 or 4. You know, there's going to be some preference playing in there, but I'm very, very happy with how we walked out of OU and UU. Heading into day 2, the St. Louis Rampardos had a couple things we need to accomplish. The first thing we needed was a very, very good Stealth Rocker. That was our priority heading into the RU tier. The first Pokemon I was looking at was Rhyperior. I think Rhyperior would have been a great fit for our team, carrying solid rock ability, being able to take a lot of hits, and be able to dish back with 140 base attack. Not to mention the ability to set up with Swords Dance and Rock Polish, and potentially sweep teams as well. Unfortunately, Rhyperior was taken from us very, very early on in the first round, and our first round pick in the RU tier was actually in the 15th draft position. So far we have drafted 11th, 12th, and 15th. We've gotten the shaft. There's no doubt about it. Now, even so, there was a couple other Pokemon that I thought we could focus on. So with, you know, Rhyperior being taken, I figured it was very important for me, looking at some of the other teams, to grab a Fairy type. Now, I had a long list of Fairy type Pokemon that actually included Pokemon like Floette from the NU tier because I was getting desperate and I needed the Fairy type. Well, I was able to luckily grab the ugliest of fairies, that is Aromatisse. Now, Aromatisse has very, very good natural bulk in both its HP and defense and specially defensive stats. Its fairy typing makes it only really immune to poison and steel, which is covered very nicely by Mega Metagross. Aromatisse can also be a Wish Passer. It also gets the Stab Moonblast, which is going to threaten dragons. Now, the reason why I absolutely had to grab Aromatisse is because I did notice there was a few teams that were drafting dual dragons. Pokemon like Garchomp and Haxorus and Dragonite and so on and so forth, the Laddies, etc. Aromatisse was important because I need to force my opponent to not just be like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to bring 2 dragons and click Outrage or Draco Meteor. Aromatisse is able to stop that, even just in the planning stage alone. It forces my opponent to think twice about bringing their dragons, or at least more than one, because they'll get completely shut down. Aromatisse is very, very good. Like I said, boasting very impressive defensive and HP stats. Also have the ability to be a little bit offensive if it needs to be. Carrying moves like Psyshock and I believe Energy Ball as well. Aromatisse fits this team very, very well, adding a little bit more defensive presence that I didn't really grab. True walls I didn't grab early on in the draft. Now, our next pick in the RU tier was a little bit quicker because we did have such a late pick. And on the wheel, I decided to grab Tangrowth. Now, I was a bit tossed up between Tangrowth and Trevenant, and I went with Tangrowth because I don't like knockoff. I don't like being knocked off. I don't like having dark weaknesses as much as possible. I try to avoid that. And Tangrowth does not have that. Standard grass Pokemon are very, very good defensively, giving me a ground resist that I otherwise didn't have as well, pairing nicely with the fact that I have a couple weaknesses. Now, he's got a ridiculous attack and special attack stat, not to mention his HP and defense are also pretty viable. He also has the amazing ability Regenerator, recovering a large portion of his HP every time he switches in and out. I'm very, very happy we were able to pick up Tangrowth, and I think it's going to be a very important Pokemon on our team, carrying Sleep Powder, Leech Seed, Leaf Storm, and so on. Knockoff as well for utility, which makes Tangrowth such a phenomenal Pokemon. It also pairs pretty nicely with Pokemon like Vaporeon and Metagross. I just feel like all around, you can start to see the synergy build between this team, and the fact that we have now picked 8 amazing Pokemon that really work cohesively together. Although, unfortunately, because we were not able to grab Rhyperior, we still have not grabbed our Stealth Rocker yet, or dedicated or focused on Stealth Rocker. And you'll see in the next few rounds, the rest of the RU tier and the NU tier below, that becomes a very, very top-notch priority for me and the St. Louis Rampardos. Now, again, because of our draft pick, we were forced to the very bottom barrel of the RU tier, which is a little bit thinner and more shallow than some of the other tiers here that we had to draft from. So by the time it got to me to pick, there were very few options left. Druddigon, Combuskin, I think Sneasel might have been available, Omastar. There wasn't much left in the RU tier. When I say there wasn't much left, I mean there was like 6 Pokemon that I could have picked. So I was a little bit backed into a corner. And I was basically tossing between 2 particular Pokemon. There was Omastar, and there was Druddigon. Both of which have the ability to set up Stealth Rocks. However, Omastar has the ability to set up Toxic Spikes and Spikes as well. Not to mention the fact that it does get Shell Smash, perhaps one of the best setup moves in the game. And its typing isn't all that bad, has a huge weakness to grass, of course, but it hits really hard with base 125 special attack. Now, it was a tough decision because I do love Druddigon. I think Druddigon is a phenomenal Pokemon, carrying Rough Skin and Sheer Force, moves like Glare and Dragon Tail, not to mention the ability to hit incredibly hard with some of the elemental punches, and it also gets Stealth Rock, so it can be a very, very offensive Pokemon or a support Pokemon. But ultimately, I decided that Lord Helix must be on our team. There was honestly no doubt about it. I felt like Omastar's versatility really stacks up and gives me a lot of options moving into future weeks here. Again, because it can Shell Smash, it can be defensive, it can set up hazards. It also has weak armor, so with a Focus Sash, it's able to get up Stealth Rocks and then potentially either fire off a hit or get up another layer of hazards like Toxic Spikes. I really like Omastar actually after drafting it, and I feel very good about it incorporating it into the rest of our draft and the rest of our team moving forward here. Lastly, we are put into the NU tier. My specialty of sorts. If you don't know, I am primarily an NU tier player, so this is a tier that I felt that I was able to really capture and really be able to pick some of the better Pokemon that would be crucial to our team. Now, unfortunately again, we were picked as the 16th pick in the NU tier. So we are all the way to the bottom of the barrel here again. So our draft order, to repeat, was 11th, 12th, 15th, and 16th. So Snipe City was bound to happen. However, it did not. We were able to get all 3 Pokemon I had my sights set on for the NU tier. Now, the first Pokemon I needed and I had to prioritize, and I did not think it would get drafted before me, to be perfectly honest, and I didn't think it would get drafted maybe at all, because I think it's always a forgotten Pokemon. But the Pokemon I drafted first in the NU tier with that 16th pick is indeed Golurk. Now again, I wanted to emphasize the importance of Stealth Rocks in a league like this, and Golurk has the ability to set up Stealth Rocks. It has good natural bulk. It gets no guard dynamic punches, which always will confuse. It gets Iron Fist boosted and has a massive attack stat, not to mention a ghost typing to provide a spin blocker otherwise. It pairs very, very nicely with a lot of my team, and Golurk hits incredibly hard. Again, it does have good natural bulk too, boasting 80 base defense and special defense, and a good HP stat as well. Its speed leaves a little bit to be determined, but I think Golurk is a great fit for this team. Adds another powerhouse on the physical side. Now, we did have the wheel pick, so I was able to go back-to-back here, and there was one Pokemon I wanted probably more than any other Pokemon in the NU tier, and this was a Pokemon that I had to have. Now, my counsel may not have advised for it, but I had to draft this Pokemon. The Pokemon I drafted was indeed Kecleon. Kecleon is a protein user, mostly notably from Greninja, who has been banned to Ubers, and Frogadier, its little baby counterpart. Kecleon is the only other Pokemon that does get protein, where his ability and his type changes every time he attacks. For example, if I use Shadow Sneak, I will turn into a Ghost type Pokemon. Sucker Punch will turn me into a Dark type Pokemon, and so on and so forth. Having the ability to change types makes it very difficult for my opponent to prepare, for one, and two, be able to hit the right move to make sure they hit me right, and hit me super effective otherwise. Now, Kecleon has a very wide move pool. Some moves I'm not going to mention, but Priority and Fake Out, Sucker Punch, and Shadow Sneak. Hard-hitting moves like the Elemental Punches and Drain Punch, Power Up Punch, Reliable Recovery and Recover itself, and it also can carry Stealth Rocks. Now, as I mentioned, the importance of Stealth Rocks is very, very high, especially on a team that didn't have a good Stealth Rocker before. So my 3 picks in a row were Stealth Rockers. Kecleon is fantastic, and I'm so glad to be adding it to the team. It also boasts a very, very big 120 base special defense stat. Something people often forget. Base 90 attack, and again, is a little bit slow, but does really well otherwise. Now, we had the last pick overall in the NU tier because we did draft last. So I didn't think it would be available, and I had tossed up a few different options here. One of the Pokemon I was looking at was Leavanny. Now, I didn't think Leavanny would get drafted, so I figured it'd be safe, and it's probably, it's safe in free agency now. But it carries Sticky Web, and it's probably the second most viable Sticky Web user behind Galvantula. Now, do I really necessarily want Leavanny? No. But having Sticky Web opens up so many doors for my team. It is a fantastic lead, also grabs me another Grass-type Pokemon, and gives me a Bug-type, which I otherwise don't have. Another Pokemon I was heavily considering was Ditto. Now, surprisingly, Ditto was not drafted at all, but I did not draft it either. Ditto is very, very cool because it automatically transforms into your opponent and steals any of their stat boosts. So it's a very, very valuable Pokemon. I would not be surprised if it gets picked up in free agency later on in the season. But the Pokemon that I was aiming for, and I personally thought would be a first round, maybe second round pick in NU, is Mesprit. Now, we did end up drafting Mesprit last overall in the UCL draft, and I will say that I am very, very stoked for Mesprit to be on this team. Mesprit can do a lot of different things, and I tweeted out yesterday that I look at it as being kind of a cheaper version of Mew, not having the exact move pool, but having a very diverse move pool and very impressive base stats, including 80 HP, I believe, 80 speed, and 105 across the rest of the stats. So it's very, very naturally bulky and diverse. You can run it physically offensive with U-turn and knockoff. You can run it especially offensive with things like Dazzling Gleam. Psyshock, of course. It gets all sorts of coverage. I think it gets Thunderbolt as well. Not to mention, again, it is a Stealth Rock user. Now, I do have a little bit of a Dart weakness you can see through a couple of the Pokemon, but Pokemon like Conkeldurr and Hydreigon are able to absorb that, so I feel good about that. And Mesprit, I think, is going to add so much to the team, being another Levitate user as well, to kind of counter the little bit of a ground weakness we had initially. So, that is going to conclude our draft for the St. Louis Rampardos, picking 12 amazing Pokemon, including Mega Metagross, Raikou, Conkeldurr. In the RU tier, in the UU tier, we were able to grab, I have to look at my notes because I forgot, Hydreigon, Crobat, and Vaporeon. In the RU tier, we were able to grab Tangrowth, Aromatisse, and Omastar. And lastly, in the NU tier, we were able to grab Golurk, Kecleon, and Mesprit to round out our team. Do I think the St. Louis Rampardos have the best team in the league on paper? Yes. Do I think the St. Louis Rampardos are going to win more than 10 games this season? Absolutely yes. Now, you may think I'm cocky, you may think I'm confident, you may think I'm just... But I think that this team is going to be freaking amazing, and I am very, very excited for this league. I am very, very excited for the competition, and I am very excited to see the Rampardos head smash through our opponents. Now, all that aside, let's be serious here. This is a fun league, guys. This is a fun league. It is not meant to be as competitive as some of the other leagues. It is a fun league, but there is going to be a level of competition. I am going to be bringing my standard preparation as I did every week in previous leagues. I will be bringing you guys the pregame press conferences. I may be giving you guys some postgame press conferences for fun. We're going to be doing our team building and all sorts of cool stuff. Again, I am very, very excited and thankful to have been invited into this league in the first place. So I do want to extend my thank you to people like King Nappy who put this league together, the Heated Mo and PK Sparks, and so on down the list. A lot of amazing people in this league, guys, and I really encourage you throughout this season to not only support me, but to support the other coaches, the other trainers, and YouTubers as well. We all work very, very hard to put out good content for you guys, and we have combined 16 of the best Pokemon YouTubers on YouTube and Twitch to do this for you guys. guys and to do this for ourselves and to have a good time. So all the cockiness aside, all the, you know, obviously guys, like I'm gonna say this now because some people don't get it. It's an act. It's part of playing up the whole thing as the coach. So don't take it too personally. Don't think I'm like that crazy, but it's all about fun, guys. I do think we're gonna do really well, and I'm very excited for this season. We played the Newcastle Needle Kings and Patters first in the UCL, so I'm very excited for that. Our second week, I believe, is against Shady Penguin, so we have lots of cool things to come. So I'm very excited. I hope you guys are as well. If you could and you haven't done so yet, please hit the thumbs up rating for me on this video. To clarify what that does for me, so a lot of people don't know, is it does help me with the channel. It helps grow the channel, because by liking the video, you are increasing the amount of people that might be exposed to it by things like Twitter automatically tweeting out your like and so on and so forth. I don't get paid for more likes, so if anyone thinks that, you don't, that's not how it works. But it does help the exposure, and it does help people like myself who are putting a lot of time into their content get a little bit more exposure than they otherwise would. So again, I do encourage you to like the video for me, but also, and even maybe more importantly for the other coaches and stuff like that, this is a fun collaborative league, and we're going to be growing together and having a great time together. So I hope you guys are willing to support every single one of our coaches, including Shady and Nips and Kristen and Twit and all these people, such phenomenal individuals and such good friends, and I'm very excited for this league. So we've just ran over the 30-minute mark. This is a very long video. I hope you guys did enjoy. My name is Dan. I'm the coach of your St. Louis Rampardos, and I'm going to get the heck out of here. Peace.